Hello and welcome to the Oregon Business Matters podcast, brought to you by Oregon Business and Industry, Oregon's statewide Chamber of Commerce. At Oregon Business Matters, we focus on insights, issues, and initiatives that impact Oregonians' shared prosperity and the state's economic health. I'm Angela Wilhelms, President and CEO of OBI, and your host here at Oregon Business Matters. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with one of Oregon's busiest people. He is president and CEO of a multi-generational family business that operates in 9 states throughout the West. He's highly engaged in civic and public life. He serves on OBI's board of directors, and he's actively engaged in the activities of his very busy kids. And he still even finds time to tweet and play pickleball now and then. Was that fairly accurate?
Yeah, that's fairly accurate.
Right.
It sounds much more kind than maybe my wife or my mother would describe.
That's
great.
All right. So with me today from the Papé Group, welcome to the podcast, Jordan Papé.
Thank you. Happy to be with you.
All right. Well, Jordan, we're here in your Eugene office. It's a beautiful day here, so thank you for the hospitality. Let's just talk for a second to get started. I mean, Papé is an Oregon institution, and I think a lot of Oregonians recognize the name from the signs they see as they drive, up and down and through towns around the state. But tell us a little more about the basics. It's kind of hard to know where to start when you're talking about a company as great and diverse as this, that people, again, recognize but might not actually know much about. So take us back to the basics.
Sure. When you think about Papé, think of us a lot like your car dealership that you might interface with day in and day out in your normal life. We're a dealership for heavy equipment companies throughout the West. The major relationships that we have are with John Deere, Kenworth, Hyster-Yale, and Ditch Witch. And so we do all the sales, service, warranty, rental side that you might expect with them. And when we think about what makes us similar or different from our competitors is most of our peers or competitors have a relationship with one of those manufacturers, and they either say grace over the area that they have or they try and grow it a little bit. What we've tried to put together is an end-to-end solution that makes sense for our customers, right? The vocational Kenworth trucks match up beautifully with John Deere's industrial and agricultural base. The warehousing of Hyster forklifts obviously ties in with farming and with the forestry industry and again, vocational trucks. So they all match up really well together.
Yeah, you mentioned forestry, and actually I wanted to ask about that, so I'll just do it now. The company's evolved over time, but Papé, I mean, you're not just a dealer, or at least you haven't always been a dealer. Talk a little bit about some of the things that the company actually helped pioneer that people might take for granted today, some of that equipment.
Yeah, so the twist that you have to make when you're serving a business customer is that what might work in a different part of the country for a John Deere tractor or a Kenworth truck isn't necessarily going to work in every part of the country. And so when it comes to forestry, you can think of just how different the Southeast timber stands are from the Pacific Northwest, where we have the big, heavy timber. And so one of the solutions that we sought to solve back in the 70s, before I was even born, we helped reinvent logging in the Pacific Northwest by taking excavators that had not been used to do shovel logging and move the logs up and down the hillsides. And we developed first the 235, or 225, excuse me, then the 235 to be log handlers. And that's completely changed the way that we did shovel logging in the Northwest. And we've done similar things with trying to get John Deere combines to work in the grass seed markets, or John Deere tractors and combines, again, on the unleveled land in the Palouse, right? You put the big leveling kits on those. So it's all about tweaking great products to work for our customers in the spaces that they're doing business.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you end up sort of being in the middle of those solutions, working with those, the brands, the product brands, the Deeres, et cetera, and then bringing that knowledge from your local consumers. And how does that work? Do you have innovation folks in-house? Do you kind of work with those larger companies as they're designing products? I mean, that's
Yeah, one of the legendary individuals in our company shares a name with one of our past presidents. His name's Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter has worked with us probably going on 60 years now, and every time he tries to retire, it sounds something more like he just changed laundry day at home, but he still pops up and gets involved. And so I kid you not, today, Jimmy Carter is still working on a project for us with John Deere where we're working on taking John Deere wheel loaders and adding fork bunks to the front end of them to do single pass unloading of log trucks. Now, this is a solution we solved in the 70s with Caterpillar, but John Deere has not traditionally had that solution. But John Deere is one of the top brands in the world for forestry. So we really do believe that this needs to come to market and soon. So again, Jimmy steps up and he's one of those guys who can listen to it while it's running, tap on it a little bit, and he understands the underlying issues that need to be solved.
Wow. And what a massive amount of knowledge he's probably transferred to so many other people here over those decades. That's a very cool story.
Absolutely.
So if I'm not mistaken, the company was founded in 1938, so we're heading into 90 years, and we're now in fourth generation leadership. And talk about how your father, Randy, before you, and you now as that fourth generation leader have worked to diversify and grow the business. Because I think a lot of people, again, in Oregon are probably familiar, but don't realize how widespread the Papé name is and the company is.
Yeah, so each generation has modified what we were doing at the time. And so I think that's a great lesson in family business. I think some family businesses get locked into their identity of I own this company and I represent this brand and that's what we do as a family and they become inflexible. We started as an Allis-Chalmers dealer. The Oregon Electric Station that's currently the old spaghetti factory on 5th Street, that was our first dealership. Huh. And Allis-Chalmers really isn't around anymore, right? So had we not migrated away from them to Caterpillar and my grandfather's generation, we would have never had the big boom that we had in his generation that teed up Randy to be successful in diversifying the business. And so, when it came to Randy, the focus became if building out the I-5 corridor and forestry were really big for my grandfather's generation, well, once I-5's built out and the spotted owl hits, then all of a sudden you have to diversify the business. And Randy was a brilliant finance mind. He was very entrepreneurial. In college, he had started his own businesses that were separate from the Papé Group that he maintained and grew even when he came into the Papé Group. And within the Papé Group, he kept that same mindset of diversification. How do we do different but similar things to balance out the disruption that we were facing in the 90s? So he brings on forklifts and expands the business out of Southern Oregon and into Washington and California. And Flightcraft at the time, and having the courage to leave Caterpillar, which was such a unique part of our branding. It was Papé Cat. It was tied together. That along with he became a transportation commissioner and he saw all the stats that were happening with trucks and highways, and that led him into really wanting to get into the truck business, which we got into with Kenworth. And so all of that diversification and creativity that Randy had was focused around industrial companies with parts and service and a dealership focus on the Papé side of the business.
That's interesting. So it maintained that central heart, that central theme, but he found ways to sort of build out the spokes of the hub and spoke, or the wheel, if you will, so that it was a little more well-rounded, if we could just, beat that pun to a pulp. So fourth generation leader, do you think there'll be a fifth generation? And how do you think about talking to the next generation about the company? And I mean, they're young, you're young, so it's not a today necessity, but how do you think about that?
Yeah, so G5, as we refer to them as we think about bringing them along in education about the family business, is already starting to work in the business. The three olders, there's six that are. I have a son and two daughters, and my brother Ryan has two sons and a daughter, and there are only three owners in the company: Susie, Ryan, and his family, and me and my family. And so as we think about developing these six, the older three, which all happen to be boys, they've all started their summer work. But that's by virtue of age and the requirements that we have before you're allowed to work inside the family business. So we'll see then if the daughters begin to show interest and want to come and start to do some summer work inside the family business over the next couple of years. But we do a lot of that, bring them in, introduce them, let them know what the opportunity is. But my father also served as a great role model for not really putting a heavy hand on wanting us to dedicate our careers to the family business. I started outside the family business. He was very supportive of me going and trying different things. But then he was a great recruiter too. So I was working 100 hours a week in investment banking down in San Francisco, and he'd call me knowing I was probably going to be working till midnight, 1 a.m, but he would call me at 10 o'clock from his hot tub in his second home over in Bend to just ask how great my life was going. And over time, I realized, there might be some great options in the family business.
Yeah, that's a pretty good recruiting tactic. That's hard to compete with.
Yeah.
So I want to switch a little bit just to some business operations, and we don't have to get into all the details, but we are a policy shop at OBI well, and you know what we do. You're a past chair, and thank you for your support and service on the board. But, at the end of the day, we're talking state policy on a regular basis. So I'm always curious when I get to talk to business leaders and business owners who operate in multiple states, and you're in 9 of them, because it has to give you a great lens into what we refer to as Oregon's competitiveness. How are we situated against these other states, which are all really, at the end of the day, competing for business and for workers and for capital investment? So what's your lens on that from the Papé landscape?
Well, of the 9, the 3 that we do most of our business out of are Oregon, Washington, and California. So,
okay.
they fight very hard to be very similar to each other in not being easy places to do business. And so you as a company have to be really on your game if you're going to serve those markets, because there are a lot of rules and a lot of penalties that can get in your way if you're not absolutely on your game. And so that can be a huge challenge. We recently entered into the Arizona market with the Ditch Witch side of the business. That's just a different world down there. They are very open and inviting to businesses and want to recruit people. I know we've all seen the recent headlines with Dutch Brothers, and that hits me in the heart because that's just a great Oregon business story. And I love those stories as a family business person who, thinks a lot about the history of our family. I think about the history of Oregon and the great companies that have come out of Oregon. And I don't like exporting great jobs. I want to see them stay here. So, I wish that Oregon would differentiate itself from Washington and California in some ways, and that could be a huge competitive advantage to bringing great industries right here at home.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about this a lot, where there's really no reason Oregon shouldn't be a place people want to come for business, for quality of life, for a host of reasons, and yet we seem to be intent on actively pushing existing businesses away, or at least pushing their growth away. And unfortunately, we're just not as attractive anymore. We're a small economy. We can't do market moving policy like maybe California can get away with, but we keep trying. So I like that. I like the way you phrase that. We need to differentiate ourselves in a way that attracts people and workers and jobs and companies and investment, not the other way around.
Yeah.
One of the things that you've gotten yourself roped into is what I believe is referred to right now loosely and maybe formally as the Southern Willamette Valley Innovation Corridor. And so you were just talking about how you want to see great jobs here and how good we are, or had been at least, at growing them. Talk a little bit about that initiative, because I feel like it dovetails, especially as we're sitting here in Eugene.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, the why on doing a project like this. And this project is designed around making the space from really Oregon State up in Corvallis down to the University of Oregon here in Eugene, and really tie those markets together to take the exceptional universities that we have and leverage them to create new businesses, new and exciting jobs. I mean, we're heading into a period of AI where everybody's talking about the potential to lose jobs. We should be doing everything to leverage those universities and what's spinning out of those universities to create the replacement industries of the future. And so that's the global why. And so then, Jordan, why would you attach yourself to that? As a family business, I think a lot about future generations, our future generations, the future generations of our employees that we call members. And I think, well, if we have so many assets and spaces between Eugene and Corvallis that we could foster to bring in great industries and exciting jobs, if I can lean into that and prevent kids from having to move to Texas or Arizona or Florida for their careers, then, we get our own kids and grandkids with exciting careers that pay well in Oregon. That's a fabulous thing to lean into. I don't want to have to jump on a plane and fly to Florida to go visit my grandkids. I want them to realize all the benefits of the skiing and the coasts and the forests and the hiking, and also still be able to afford their lifestyle through an exciting career that stimulates them right here at home.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There aren't very many places in the country that have two research universities of the caliber that we have in that kind of proximity to each other. I think of the Research Triangle in North Carolina as one and maybe the only other really true example where they've taken these public research institutions and said, we can do this. We can lift each other up. So sure, we might compete on the ball field occasionally, but we can lift each other up academically and with research. We can create this culture of innovation and partner with business on workforce preparedness, on that future forward innovation. And they've been doing that for decades. I don't remember not knowing about the Research Triangle. It would be very cool if we could leverage that, 45 mile distance between the two and have that here and become that place that's nationally known as a destination for high quality of life, high innovation, high academics, high research, high productivity, and just the place you want to be.
Well, and not only that, but think of the catalyst that we have right now, right? The moment is now, not 30 years from now. And the reason the moment is now is you have Phil Knight investing in the University of Oregon at the Knight Sciences campus and all the excitement that's going to come out of bioengineering. So that's a leverage moment in addition to all the other great things the U of O has to offer. And then Oregon State, you've got the Huangs and NVIDIA and all the technology that's coming with AI and their chips and what we could be building out there, right? So you have all of this excitement and investment happening from two world leaders that are making exciting investments. That's going to be extremely compelling. And then add on to it simple things like Oregon joining the Big Ten. Oregon is currently the smallest university in the Big Ten behind Northwestern, right? It's not going to be able to stay if it continues to compete and offer exciting career studies. In addition to competing on the ball fields, students are going to continue to apply, and it's going to have to grow from a 20,000 student population to a 30 or 40,000, right? That growth alone is going to create economic activity. And so there's just this catalytic moment right now between the exciting things that both universities have going on, the investments that are happening from the private sector into these universities, that if we can just create an attitude of yes, an attitude of friendliness, an attitude of welcoming to businesses, we could be the next Silicon Valley.
Yeah, it's been a beacon out there for a lot of people, but I don't think they've ever thought deeply about how to get there. And I think now there is a group doing that. And so thanks for stepping up and working with the university presidents and others to be a part of that. That's not the only way you're engaged in public life. And we talked about the OBI board. We talked about this. What motivates you to be involved? I mean, you've got a company to run. You've got a family. You're very. They're at the age where they're very active, and you therefore are a very active parent. So, what motivates you to give what time you have left, or to somehow carve out more time to work on these public service projects?
Well, at first I should start probably by demystifying at least one piece of it, which is in my father's generation, one of the great moves that we made was professionalizing the business. So we've got presidents of the divisions that are world class in their industries. And so nobody's waking up in the morning asking me if they can order another forklift for inventory. Nobody calls me to say, hey, should we make this sale or not? And so that frees up my time to be able to think 10 and 20 years down the road, what is our business going to become and where are we doing business and why are we there? And as I think through some of those questions, you get into well, if I'm questioning whether or not Papé should continue being in business in Oregon or California or Washington in the long run, think about the types of companies that aren't tied to a dealership geographic location, right? Their heads must be swimming with all of these questions about could they lower their taxes and regulatory burden and all of those pieces. And so, I just am in a very fortunate position surrounded by extremely talented professionals that it allows me to then lean into trying to be a part of the solution, right? How do I work with politicians on both sides of the aisle to find ways to move past barriers? And that's what I'm leaning into.
Yeah, that's a great leadership example too, where you don't have to wake up every day worrying about today or even tomorrow necessarily. You can think many years out, and that intersection of the business, the family, the place that you are, and the policies and the environment in which you're operating and living. So that makes a lot of sense, and that's great. I think a lot of business leaders strive for that. And so again, kudos to the Papé Group and how it's grown up over 90 years and for the leadership to put it in that place. Coming back to the company for another second, what's something about the company that might surprise listeners?
Well, I think we touched on a little bit of it. Innovation is a piece that I don't know that everybody thinks about. And you and I have talked about, if we are going to move towards greener energy in the future, there are a lot of solution sets out there. And one of the ones that we've leaned into is hydrogen. So we helped to found a company that is manufacturing the equipment to produce hydrogen, the actual equipment that steam methane reforms hydrogen. And then we're also a dealer for that organization. We're buying our own supply and starting to work on putting in our own fuel solutions. And then some of our manufacturers are working on hydrogen equipment that actually runs on hydrogen. So we are at the intersection where we might be one of the world's leading experts, not on any one specific technology, but how do you tie in the technology from creating hydrogen through to the equipment that's going to need hydrogen and put together a package solution for customers that they can afford and is going to make them more able to transition into a clean environment in the future.
I love that, and I think it's a great example of something we're trying to remind policymakers of a lot about our members, businesses, which is businesses exist to solve problems. I mean, it doesn't matter whether your solution is around catering for someone's event or whether your solution is around, space exploration. Businesses at their core solving a customer's needs or problems, and they're often trying to innovate and get better at those or to offer new solutions. That's kind of how the system works in a very fundamental way. And so a lot of times policymakers think they need sticks to force business to innovate and do things differently, like energy solutions, when in fact, businesses are actually trying to do this already, and maybe carrots to try to accelerate the speed or the partnership or the outcome might be the better approach. And I just think this is a great example. People don't know you're doing it. You're not doing it for publicity. You're not doing it because anyone told you had to. You're not doing it because of a regulation or a mandate. You're doing it because you can see the future and you know where you need to go, and you're willing to put in the capital and time to get there.
Yeah, and we also know that of the solution sets, we're not going to be the one to invent a new diesel engine that's even cleaner than the diesel engines being put out today. So we can't lean into that solution set. On the battery side, there are already experts out there that are solving that problem. And so for an investment that might help our customers with another solution set, this was an area that we could lean into and get excited about. And I would agree with you. We have the Oregon Business Academy that we've partnered on, which is the camp for kids in high school. It's held at Oregon State twice a summer, where we teach kids these same sort of business thoughts. And one of the messages I always try and deliver to these teens is there is no government department of fix-it. Right? There's a government department always thinking about rules and trying to set the table for policy sets that set us in the right direction. But the solutions are going to come out of the private sector. The solutions are going to come from those kids sitting at that camp who think about a problem differently and create the solution that help us have, a healthier economy, a more vibrant jobs, and cleaner way of doing things in the future.
Yeah, no, that's thank you for your work on that too. So there's one more way you find to give your time back, and that camp. Maybe we'll do an entire episode on the Oregon Business Academy for our listeners so that they can learn more about it. We'll have to get that one in the queue.
I would love that. My grandfather used to say, your community is like your piggy bank. You can't take out more than you put in. So there's always been an expectation, and I know my mother and my father and my brother and my sister-in-law and my wife Carrie, they try and also hold true to that as well.
Yeah, well, thank you for all of that. Well, we have promised our listeners a relatively condensed episode time frame here, so we're running out of time. But is there anything you want to share with folks before we sign off? Just any parting thoughts for our listeners?
Sure. We've touched on some of it already. Where my mindset is today, Oregon is uniquely situated in the world to be a vibrant place for the future. We've talked about the port of Coos Bay. Historically, I think it was one of the top 5 ports in the world by volume. You've got Portland. You've got beautiful resources and renewable natural resources. We have so many things at our fingertip in Oregon. And ironically, one of the policy sets that's been hard, which are the land use laws and the urban growth boundaries that have prevented some of the growth that we could have potentially had, has also set us up to have significant amount of great developable land, especially here in the southern Willamette Valley. And so really the parting piece is, if we want our sons and daughters and grandchildren to be able to have exciting careers in the future, if we want to be able to visit our kids by driving an hour up the road rather than getting on a 4-hour flight across the country, now's the moment in time where we need to be talking to our political leaders and talking about an ethos of friendliness, an ethos that's inviting. If we have 5 departments that are set up to say, no, you can't do something without this special permit or regulatory compliance, we should at least have 1 or 2 departments that are out there figuring out how we all navigate that so that we can get to yes. Because we need to find the job creators and put them hand in hand with departments who say, yes, we do have these regulations, but we know how to make them work for you, not against you.
Yeah, that feels like the way to reach shared goals, and actually the goals of those policies and regulations as well. Is businesses want to comply, and the government should want to help them comply. That's how you make the system work, and that's frankly how you reach the policy goals as well as the economic goals.
And if you have a department that's trying to show people how to navigate all of those rules and they can't even do it, then maybe we might at least have one department inside the government that's knocking on the various doors to say, we might need to fix this problem.
Yeah, well, we'll have our government reorganization chat in another episode, probably.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you, Jordan Papé from the Papé Group, for joining us, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in. The Oregon Business Matters podcast is a production of Oregon Business and Industry, and it is available on all standard platforms. For more information about OBI, visit OregonBusinessIndustry.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you.